The CEO mocked a janitor applying as her assistant, and at first, it seemed like just another small, forgettable moment in a high-powered office where decisions were made quickly and people were judged even faster, but within 1 hour, everything would change in a way no one in that building would ever forget. Amelia Grant sat at the head of the glass conference table, her posture sharp, her eyes colder than the city skyline stretching behind her office windows. She was known for her precision, her control, and her refusal to entertain anything she considered a waste of time. And today, as she flipped through resumes for the open executive assistant position, her patience was already thin. "Next," she said without looking up. The HR manager hesitated for a second, then opened the door, and in walked a man wearing a simple uniform, slightly worn shoes, and hands that carried the marks of hard labor. He held a folder carefully, as if it contained something precious. Amelia looked up, and for a brief second, her expression shifted into confusion, then quickly into irritation. "This is a joke, right?" she said, leaning back in her chair. The man remained calm, stepping forward with quiet confidence. "No, ma'am, I'm here for the assistant position," he said respectfully. A faint laugh escaped Amelia's lips, sharp and dismissive. "You're the janitor," she said, glancing at his badge. "Daniel, right?" "Yes," he replied, "Daniel Hayes. And you think you're qualified to be my executive assistant?" she asked, her tone now carrying open disbelief. Daniel didn't flinch. "I believe I can help," he said simply. The room grew slightly tense, the HR manager shifting uncomfortably. Amelia closed the folder in front of her with a soft but final tap. "This position requires organization, communication, strategic thinking, and experience in corporate operations," she said, her voice crisp, "not cleaning floors." There was a pause, but Daniel didn't move. "I understand," he said, "but I also understand your company." Amelia raised an eyebrow, amused now. "Oh really?" she said, leaning forward slightly. "Enlighten me." Daniel took a breath, then spoke, not loudly, but with a clarity that cut through the room. "Your last quarter losses weren't because of market decline," he said, "they were due to internal inefficiencies, duplicated vendor contracts, and a breakdown in your supply chain coordination, especially in the Southeast region." The HR manager blinked in surprise, but Amelia's expression hardened. "You think reading a few reports makes you an expert?" she said. Daniel shook his head. "I didn't read reports," he said, "I noticed patterns." Amelia gave a short laugh. "From mopping floors?" "Yes," he replied, "from being invisible." That answer lingered in the room longer than expected. Amelia tapped her fingers lightly on the table. "You have 1 minute," she said, "convince me why I shouldn't have security escort you out." Daniel nodded, stepping closer to the table. "For the past 6 months," he began, "I've worked night shifts, which means I've seen who stays late, which departments are struggling, and which executives are constantly in crisis mode. I've seen duplicate shipments arrive, I've heard arguments about budget cuts, and I've noticed how often your leadership team works in silos instead of together." Amelia's expression didn't change, but she wasn't interrupting anymore. "You're losing money not because of external pressure," he continued, "but because your internal communication is fractured. Your assistant would normally coordinate these things, but from what I've seen, your last 3 assistants barely lasted because they couldn't keep up with the chaos." The HR manager shifted again, clearly uncomfortable now. "And you think you can fix that?" Amelia asked, her tone quieter, more measured. "I think I can organize it," Daniel replied, "and once it's organized, the problems become visible." Amelia stared at him for a long moment, then finally leaned back. "This is ridiculous," she said, though her voice lacked the earlier sharpness. "You're a janitor, not a strategist." Daniel gave a small nod. "I understand why you see it that way," he said, "but sometimes the person closest to the ground sees the cracks before the people at the top." Amelia glanced at the clock. "Time's up," she said, standing. "Thank you for your enthusiasm." The HR manager quickly stepped forward. "I'll escort you out," she said softly. Daniel nodded, but before he turned, he added one last sentence. "Check your Southeast logistics contract," he said, "you're paying twice for the same service." Amelia didn't respond. Daniel left the room. The door closed. Silence settled. Amelia exhaled, shaking her head slightly. "Unbelievable," she muttered, picking up the next resume. But something about his words lingered, annoying, persistent. She looked at the clock again. Then, almost reluctantly, she turned to her laptop. "Pull up the Southeast Logistics contracts," she said to her assistant. A few clicks later, the documents appeared. At first glance, everything looked normal. Then she noticed it, a duplicate entry. Her fingers paused. "Scroll down," she said. "Another one." Her expression changed. "Open both contracts," she said quickly. Side by side, the mistake was clear. Two nearly identical agreements with slightly different vendor names, both active, both billing the company. Amelia's heartbeat quickened slightly. "How long has this been active?" she asked. 6 months, the assistant replied. 6 months. Exactly what Daniel had said. Amelia stood abruptly. "Call finance," she said, "now." Within minutes, the room filled with urgency. Calls were made, files were checked, and what started as one duplicate contract quickly revealed a chain of similar errors across multiple regions. Money wasn't just being lost, it was being drained. And no one had noticed. Amelia felt a rare, unfamiliar sensation, not panic, but something close to it. "How did we miss this?" she demanded. No one had an answer. Then she remembered. From being invisible, her eyes moved toward the door. "Where is he?" she asked suddenly. "Who?" the HR manager replied. "The janitor," Amelia said, her voice sharper now. "Daniel." "He probably left the building," she said. "Find him," Amelia said. Within minutes, security was contacted, and Daniel was located in the lower level, quietly continuing his work as if nothing had happened. He was brought back upstairs. This time, when he entered the room, the atmosphere was completely different. Amelia stood as he walked in. No one had ever seen her stand for an interviewee before. "Daniel," she said, her voice steady, but no longer dismissive, "how did you know?" Daniel looked slightly surprised by the question. "I didn't know for sure," he said. "I noticed patterns, repeated vendor names, frequent complaints from the logistics team, and delayed shipments. It suggested duplication." Amelia studied him carefully. "You figured that out, without access to the system?" she asked. "Yes," he replied. "I listened." There was a pause. Amelia nodded slowly. "In 1 hour," she said, "you've identified a problem that cost this company millions." Daniel didn't respond. He simply stood there, calm as before. Amelia walked around the table, stopping in front of him. "Why apply for assistant?" she asked. "Because assistants see everything," Daniel said, "and I wanted a chance to help fix it." Amelia let out a small breath, almost a quiet laugh, but this time, it wasn't mocking. It was impressed. "You're not getting escorted out," she said. The room went silent. "You're getting the job," she added. The HR manager's eyes widened. "Effective immediately." Daniel blinked, clearly not expecting it. "Are you serious?" he asked. Amelia gave a slight nod. "But understand this," she said, "this isn't charity, this is performance-based. You prove yourself, you stay." Daniel gave a small, confident smile. "That's all I need," he said. Over the next few weeks, the change was undeniable. Daniel reorganized schedules, streamlined communication, and most importantly, he connected departments that had been operating in isolation for years. Meetings became shorter but more effective, problems were identified earlier, and solutions came faster. Amelia watched it all closely. One evening, as the office began to empty, she called him into her office. "You were right," she said simply. Daniel tilted his head slightly. "About what?" he asked. "About being invisible," she replied. "I've been so focused on the top, I forgot to look at what's happening below." Daniel nodded. "It's easy to miss," he said. Amelia looked out the window for a moment, then back at him. "I judged you the moment you walked in," she admitted, "and I was wrong." Daniel didn't rush to respond. "Most people do," he said calmly. Amelia gave a small, thoughtful smile. "Not anymore," she said. And in that moment, something shifted, not just in her company, but in her perspective. Because sometimes, the person you overlook is the one who sees everything clearly. And sometimes, it only takes 1 hour to realize the biggest mistake isn't in the system, it's in how you see people.